Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today is longtime listener, poet laureate, and Taya Master Anne-Marie Young. This is your Daily Dose of Happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. Anne-Marie, last week I was telling you about how I have this project that I'm working on, and there's actually a software project that goes with it that I've been working on for the last few days. The project, and or I guess our project, the project is how to use AI with programming, because I'm not a great programmer, but if I can get the AI to write most of the code, maybe I can get there. And it's also about creating this program so that we can do this really innovative thing that Anne-Marie and I were talking about last week for helping people get into a higher vibration space, which is what we're going to be talking about with you today. So there's kind of a merging going on there. But I wanted to let you know, Anne-Marie, not only have I discovered what the limits of AI are, but I've also discovered that AI is kind of like working with a brilliant scientist who has Alzheimer's. Because the AI has such a short attention span, it forgets what you talked about 10 minutes ago. So every conversation is a brand new conversation.
You learn something new every time then, don't you?
And for those who are interested, after today's episode, I do a second one in the evening with Joel Elston, and today's topic is going to be mental health and AI. In other words, what role can AI play in mental health? So those who are interested in the AI question, you'll want to be sure to check in on that episode as well. But not for this episode, because this one is where we meet Anne Swanson, who is the author of the book Meditation for the Real World. And she's going to be telling us all kinds of stuff that we didn't even know. Now, Anne-Marie, you and I know quite a bit about meditation. Our listeners know quite a bit about meditation. I'm going to hazard a guess that we're going to find out by the end of this episode that we knew a lot less about meditation than we thought. That's just my guess.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I just know that I go into a little zone. Don't know whether I'm doing it right. So I'm definitely interested in this episode.
Well, then let's find out. So Anne Swanson, welcome to the program. First of all, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. And actually, my foreword in my book is called From Ancient Wisdom to Apps and AI. And
Wow.
Of course it
when I
is.
when I was writing it, I was sitting there and I was like, Alexa, do you meditate? And she goes, oh, I have plenty of techniques to teach you to relax. Would you like to hear? And she goes on. And I'm like, oh my God, even Alexa meditates nowadays. It's become so mainstream. I think people know about it, but not everybody actually practices it or puts it to practice. Maybe you've tried it and you couldn't stick with the practice or you didn't find the technique that worked for you. But that's what I'm here to talk about today is the science behind it and the real world applications, since my book is called Meditation for the Real World.
That's a good place to start on that. But I don't want to actually start there. I want to start with the story because we love stories around here. And there's always a story. There's always a story leading up to how the book got written or how the career got started.
Yeah.
And there's usually some sort of dark night of the soul. I'm going to be curious to see if there's one of those too. But tell us your story.
Yes. I definitely had a dark night of the soul in my story. Actually, several. But let's go back to the first one, which my first book is Science of Yoga. And this came out in 2019. Okay. And that book was written after, I had gone through this voyage to study yoga and meditation because I was finding them so helpful for my own anxiety and chronic pain. I had gone to India and went to China to study Tai Chi and just did this world travels followed by getting a master's of science in yoga therapy. And at this point in my career, I'm like, okay, I finally figured it out. I'm ready to get started with my career. I have this graduate degree. And so I start applying for jobs. And I kept getting rejections, one after the other, to teach perhaps, at a college, teach a course on this, all the things that I've learned, amalgamating them together. Or also I'm a massage therapist. So I was like, maybe I'll be at a spa. I was getting rejected for everything. I had over 100 rejections at this point.
Wow.
And yeah, so I was feeling moments of feeling down, but I was reading a lot of, self-help books in that time. I was journaling, I was meditating a lot in order to get into the right vibes, in order to still feel good and have hope that the right opportunity was coming my way.
Mhm.
I kept persisting despite all the rejections. And it's funny, I was so focused on, getting a local job that I had missed an email that I had in my inbox. I'd been writing on my mirror words. I wanted to feel creative. I wanted to bring together the science and the art of these practices. And I had an email from my now publisher, DK. They're part of Penguin Random House, one of the largest publishers in the world, randomly reaching out to me, offering me a book contract. Now,
Wow.
agent. I had very little social media following. I didn't even have a proposal or intention to write a book.
Whoa.
I had put out there was I wanted a big project, a big creative project that brought together all my knowledge. And I
Wow.
read the proposal, and it was science of yoga, which I went just to do pre-med course load, and then I got a master's of science in yoga therapy, so I had that science perspective, but I also worked with some of the best illustrators in the world and graphic design
Ooh,
teams.
look at this.
Really a gorgeous book, and I had gone to art school originally. So in so many ways, this book was right. It was perfect for me. And if I had gotten any of those other jobs, I wouldn't have had time.
Mm.
It was all consuming for the time period that I wrote it. So I'm very grateful that I persisted. And, actually, I was told later, my friends from graduate school, they were watching me, take photos of these words I was writing on my mirror and, doing these manifestation meditations and all of these things. And they were like, we're about to have an intervention, Anne. But good thing they didn't, because I kept on hope, and it came my way in a way I didn't even expect.
That's really cool. Yeah. I love also the fact that you were able to tie in your art background. That's something I found out is a theme that plays out over and over again in people's lives. They have disparate things that they do, things that don't seem to connect. And then all of a sudden they find their passion, and everything that they learned up to that point feeds into that one thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's
Exactly.
incredible. Absolutely incredible. I'm also curious to know, maybe you don't know the story, but you might know. Do you know how your publisher found you? I mean, like you said, you hadn't
I do know.
tried to seek a book. You hadn't tried to put out a deal. Yeah, they sought you out. Why did they seek you out?
Well, they read an article that I had written for free online,
Aw.
and it was on a blog, and it said in the description of me that I had a master's of science in yoga therapy, and they were looking for someone that had a master's degree in the field specifically. So all these articles that I'd been putting out there, all these little like breadcrumbs I'd been putting out there, one of them came back and brought in the reward. You never know what will. You just keep doing the work, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, it was one breadcrumb. How many breadcrumbs did you put down? Probably what, 10,000 or something? Who knows how many
Yeah.
you put down?
Yeah. She also looked
It
at my
only takes
YouTube
one.
channel.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
it was the fact that I had a portfolio. So I didn't have a ton of subscribers at that point, but I had quality videos up. So it one thing led to another, but I had actually ignored that email for a couple weeks. They had to follow up because I was
Oh,
so
really?
focused in on finding a local job. So it's not always the way you think it's gonna happen when it does happen.
Yeah.
That's quite often the way, isn't it?
Yeah. To be
You think you've
open
got
to
it
those
set and it comes in
possibilities.
another direction. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's exciting when
Yeah.
that happens too.
Yeah. And so, I mean, kind of one serendipitous journey to another is that it came out in 2019. And then I knew, after that first year of it being out, that it would be in 15 other languages. So I planned a
Wow.
world tour, and I had a book tour planned to go to Japan, Germany, and all over the world the whole year. I had sold everything I owned
Ugh.
to travel the world. And after my first stop in South America, COVID hit, and
Yeah.
I thought everything was delayed, but ultimately everything was canceled. And it did end up leading me in a totally different direction. I mean, I was in my mom's basement because I didn't
That's
have
heartbreaking
anywhere
when
to
that
live.
happens. That's hard.
It
Seriously,
was
that's a
really
hard thing.
hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it forced me to do online, and now I have an online course for Science of Yoga. It really forced me to go in that direction of online creation, I think, like so many creators. And it also led me to, going crazy at my mom's basement, led me to go on vacation in Hawaii. And then I was supposed to just be there a couple of weeks, but I kept having something to do next week and the next week. Now it's been 3 years and I haven't left. So I was meant to be here in Hawaii, that's for sure. I met the love of my life. I actually just got
Wow.
married last week.
Oh,
Congratulations.
congratulations.
Yes.
How
And we
exciting.
live by the ocean. So
Yeah.
it really all came together at that dark night of the soul of living in my mom's basement, of everything being canceled, of all those rejection letters that I could have let me pull me down, but I didn't
Yeah.
Sure.
ultimately. Or I let them pull me down in moments, don't get me wrong. But
Of course they
ultimately, I
did.
just kept coming back to
Yeah.
trusting that the right opportunity was coming my way.
You mentioned the key concept quite early in your story. You persisted.
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
that's the hardest one of all, because when things are going wrong, the last thing you want to do is persist. The first thing you want to do is to give up.
Yeah.
And you didn't. Congratulations. You kept going anyway.
And then that led me to, the book coming out. And as much as I love my first book, Science of Yoga, it was truly a masterpiece with such an amazing team. It has a lot of, the poses. It also talks about how yoga affects every system of your body, your immune
Mhm.
system, your nervous system, and the philosophy of yoga. It's all woven in there. But guess what everybody notices is the beautiful pictures of the poses. And heck, that's what brought me to these practices too, was doing yoga physical poses, right?
Mhm.
Mm.
However, the meditation is really where the magic happened for me. And so I knew I wanted my next book to be about meditation. And I still wanted it to incorporate the science, since that's really very much what convinces me to practice. And what I find so fascinating is how the science supports what these ancient masters have known for ages. What neuroscientists are uncovering is what intuitively many of us has felt, and that historically have been practiced throughout the world. And so I knew I wanted it to incorporate the science. So I teamed with a Harvard researcher, Dr. Sarah Lazar, and integrated the most cutting edge research in the book. And then also just real world step by step practices of how to meditate. On the cover, you have somebody sitting on a subway, they're on a train, and they're amongst all these people that are hunched over their phones, scrolling. And even one guy has his laptop out, hunched over. And she's the only one that looks chill. She's got her feet grounded down. She's sitting tall. She has headphones on. Perhaps she's listening to a guided meditation or a song that's really keeping her in the moment. She has her eyes open. You don't have to have your eyes open and have it perfectly quiet to meditate. And that's something I really want to emphasize, is that we can fit meditation into our everyday life. You don't have to be set aside 20 minutes on a cushion on the floor in perfect silence. Instead of scrolling while you wait, you can meditate while you wait. And those powerful pauses through your day could make an even bigger impact.
I agree with that. In fact,
Yeah, same.
one of the most freeing things that was ever told to me about meditation is that I was probably meditating without realizing it.
Mm.
The example that kind of came home for me that day was what my co-host called a walking meditation, because I like to go walking,
Mm.
and she was pointing out to me, you're meditating when you're just taking in the beauty of the nature and so forth. You're just in meditation mode. And I had never thought of it that way. But when I thought of it
Yeah.
that way, I said, "Oh, cool. All right. Hey, I'm a meditator now."
There's so many ways to meditate, and movement can be a way. There is, a whole section in the book and a whole type of meditation literally called walking meditation. I remember my editor was like, "That's what it's called." I was like, "Yeah, that's what it's called." And my favorite cue is what Thich Nhat Hanh said. He said, "With each step, you imagine you're the happiest person on earth." So each step
Ooh,
reminds you. Do that next time on your walk. It's
I'll
really
try that.
powerful. You're like, what would it feel like to be the happiest person on earth? And then you're like, wait a second, I am.
Uh-huh.
That's a cool technique. I'm definitely going to try that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, tell us a little bit more about the science, because the book, your first book was The Science of Yoga. So it sounds like you also did the science of meditation, even though that's not what the title of the book is. But tell us about the science behind it.
Yeah. There's the first chapter that dives into the science supporting meditation, the neuroscience, of course. How does it change our brain? Some of the most compelling research is in that area. But we also know that meditation helps us in many other ways. It changes our genetic expression. If we zoom in to the chromosomes at the end of telomeres inside, there are these caps at the end of them that when we get older, those get shorter and shorter and shorter. Those caps, the telomeres at the end of the chromosomes, they are an indicator of like aging and stress when they get shorter. Meditation preserves the length and in some cases can lengthen those telomeres. So on a
Mm.
cellular level, meditation improves your health and longevity, in essence helping your cells function as if they were younger, and also every system. So we improve our immunity, so we get less sick days. Our cardiovascular health, that's one of the biggest areas of the research. You'll lower your blood pressure, regulate it. Cholesterol lowers, heart rate variability increases, which is your heart's ability to respond really quickly and well to a variety of circumstances. So cardiovascular health is really huge. And
You
and
have my
then
attention
back to,
right there, by the way. I'm already focused just by hearing you say that.
yeah,
I knew
yeah,
you would be.
especially many of us with some family history of these different conditions. It felt like science for a while was telling us that your genetics are your destiny.
Mm.
But now what we know is that over 90% of the likelihood of you getting a disease is not your genes, it's your lifestyle. So your
Mhm.
lifestyle, your mindset, your choices, those are a better indicator of whether or not you're going to get the diseases that you see than your family history of it. And I think that is so empowering to us that, just because somebody in my family has dementia doesn't mean that I will too.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that meditation can help is your brain health. So as we get older, our brains get smaller. Like my 99 going on 100-year-old grandpa, his brain is smaller now than it was in his 30s. That's just what happens. It just gets smaller and smaller as we age, especially if we deal with anxiety, depression, trauma. Chronic pain also degrades critical areas in your brain that have to do with focus and memory, right? That's why we get that brain fog.
Mhm.
So meditation rebuilds the critical areas that tend to degrade with all those conditions and aging, helping you to be able to think faster, have a better memory, plan better. So meditation could help you age better in your brain, help your brain age better.
It makes total sense to me. It really does. Now, I'm reminded of a conversation I had. It was in the second year of the podcast, which is about 10 years ago. And at that point, my co-host was my sister-in-law, Iona, who is she now has her PhD in statistics, but at the time she was pursuing it in the neurosciences, and so she was exploring a lot of these kinds of things. And one of the things that she told me about one day was how we have all these different ways that we can measure just about every physiological system we have in the body. And you can wire somebody up in a laboratory to measure everything. You can measure, their circulatory system, their nervous system, the endocrine system, the bones. You can measure everything. And one thing that that researcher, and I don't know what the background on this was, but a researcher actually tried to do this. They decided they were going to wire somebody up and they were going to monitor all these systems while they had the subject focus on certain things. So first they had the subject focus on love, somebody they loved or something they loved, something along that line. And then they traced what was happening in the body. And what they noticed was that from the moment that the subject focused on this very high vibe positive thing, 90 seconds later, there was a point in the body where there was either a disease or an illness or an injury or something like that. And they could actually detect the cellular activity increasing to heal that injury. And then they said, okay, now focus on something that makes you angry or upset. Again, same thing. This time, 90 seconds later, at the same location, the body was starting to kill off the live, healthy cells. So the mind, either way, was driving what was going on in the body at the point of injury or illness or whatever it was that the body was trying to deal with.
Yeah. And that telomere research that I was telling you about earlier, that indicator of longevity and health and how well your genes are working, they found that if we can also look at the types of thoughts people are having, if they're more positive and compassionate and kind, then it also lengthens telomeres, helps your cells work better. So on every level, compassion and kindness and positive thoughts are better for you than the negative, than anger. And that's what I wanted to do with this book, is create meditations for when we are angry or frustrated. There's a meditation for road rage in here because that's something very common in my family, right? When you're experiencing road rage, that's a natural reaction. When you have anger and these things come up, first of all, I want you to know that that's normal. Humans have a natural negativity bias for a reason. It's to keep us safe. We have specific brain structures that are constantly scanning for threats. And that's a wonderful thing in the time period where we had, tigers chasing us and very short lifespans. But nowadays, we're responding to an email as if we're going to get eaten. And we release the same chemical cocktail as if we're running from a tiger. But you know what? It doesn't need to be that way. So if you are somebody that worries and has negative thoughts, it's normal. We all do, right? But we can shift out of them. And one way is like when you notice you're experiencing really frustration. I think road rage is a great example because you're just like, gosh, what an idiot. He just cut me off, like it's so dangerous. And you want to curse, you want to flick them off, whatever. People like go way more intense than they would normally be in their everyday life, right? So it's a great example. But when you do that, your blood pressure goes up. You're getting the negative physiological effects you just described, Walt. So instead, what you can do, and we do this almost like kind of in a funny way, like is we'll send them loving kindness. If you've done a metta meditation before, it's when you send positive thoughts, loving kindness to somebody else. It's a Buddhist technique. And there's a series of things you say, but you could choose one or choose whichever comes to your mind. The first one in the series is, may they be safe. And you know what? When you say that, that feels really good because you know what? They're not being safe and they might hurt someone else. So like you truly want them, may they be safe. It almost feels a little sarcastic. So it's like it meets you where you are. You're like, may they be safe, right?
May they be safer.
Healthy, right? And then it feels better than cursing though. It's like, may they, and then you're like, you know what? I do wish them safety. You would never wish harm. So may they be healthy. May they be free from suffering, right? You just say any positive vibes to them, positive wishes. And you'll feel that anger dissipate. You won't have those negative effects you were speaking of. Instead, you're going to have positive effects because when you send compassion and kindness, it has the opposite effect. So we can take these meditation techniques and integrate them into those critical moments in our day. And I think that's where we can have a bigger impact because you're getting the physiological effects immediately.
Yeah. That's very cool. I like that. You're convincing me more and more that I should be giving more attention to meditation than I have been. Not that I haven't given any attention to it, I have, but I'm thinking maybe I need to raise my game a bit.
Sounds your opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, do you feel that way, Anne-Marie?
I tend to do it every day anyway. I like to start my morning that way. Maybe not first thing, but and also I find during the day, if I am feeling my stress levels rise, I will just put, even if it's just for 3 minutes, I'll just do a 3 minute, just listen to some music and just do a little meditation, because it just brings me back to focus, and it really helps.
What are
Yeah,
some of the
3
ways that you
minutes.
found it to be help?
It just again just takes me from that stress reaction down to a calm, more able to cope in a much better way.
Mhm.
So it just calms me
So
and
it's coping strategy,
refocuses
really.
me. Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm. Yeah, it makes
And
sense.
the great thing is that calm is contagious. So just like stress is contagious and people start to like stress out around you, like your
Mm,
family members or your coworkers when you're in high stress, calm is also contagious. So if you can strategically integrate these 3 minute, even 1 minute, honestly, even a one breath meditation can make a difference when you're about to yell at your kids, right? Close your eyes, take a deep breath. If you can integrate these powerful pauses into your day, then you'll cultivate that sense of calm that's contagious. So then, wait, now other people are nicer to me and things are starting to move smoother.
mm.
So it's a positive feedback loop.
That's very good. Yeah. Okay.
I think the only time I don't feel calm, and I would say this was the same kind of thing as meditation, but you know, when you're driving and
Mm.
then you get somewhere and you're like, I have no recollection of that journey, because you're
Yes.
almost in that meditative state, but I'm never calm afterwards, because I'm like, what if somebody had to walk through my car? That kind of, so that's the only time I don't feel calm. But I would say that was a form of meditation to a degree, because my mind's just zoned.
It was certainly a form of hypnosis.
Mm.
Yeah, it was an auto hypnosis. It was a level 1, so you weren't a danger. I mean, your body knows how to do the driving. Your subconscious mind already knows how to drive because you've
Yeah,
driven so many times.
yeah,
So yeah,
And that's always when it's a place that you typically go. That's not like somewhere new. It's like
right.
a route that you've always done over and over and over again. Yeah.
yeah.
It's fun when that happens. It's also, like you say, it's a little bit unnerving. Like, oh my God,
Yeah, it does unnerve me.
what happened to that trip?
It can happen either way. The way you described, that's quite beautiful. You were like just
Mm,
fully like present in your body. A lot of people, though, it's the other way around. Their default mode network takes over, which is that like mind wandering, me thinking, selfish thinking, and the whole drive. They're thinking about like, what am I going to do tomorrow? Why did I say that 10 years ago? Oh my gosh, I'm so stupid, right? We have that negative mind. And so when we are driving, it could actually be distraction the whole way. So it's quite a beautiful description that you described. I think that's quite rare. I think most people,
Yeah.
when they arrive somewhere, they're like, "Oh wait, how did I get here? I was just stressed the whole time, thinking about other things."
mm. It's an interesting distinction, because you're right. If you're focusing even subconsciously on negative stuff, you're setting yourself up in some way for a negative experience. So there is that
Yeah.
risk. Yeah, that's a good point.
I see.
I
I
wanna
would notice when I'm driving, I just like, especially this time of the year, when you driving along and you see trees with the blossom out, and we've got
Yeah.
daffodils and tulips and everything sort of starting to grow and bud, and I just love it. So
You're
I
in a
tend to like
gratitude
zone
state.
out. Yeah, I zone out into those kind of things when I'm driving.
Yeah.
That's
Not
No,
that I
that's
don't have
lovely.
road rage. I'm not going to be unrealistic. I do get
I
road
can't
rage.
honestly imagine you road raging. I mean, seriously, everything that I've known about you in the years I've known you, Anne Marie, road rage. No, it doesn't go together. It just doesn't.
That's the thing about road rage is it's the most unsuspecting people because they feel like they can't really be seen because you're in this like shell, but you are seen and the energy is still affecting you and it's still affecting other people,
Mhm.
even with this metal in
Oh yeah.
between you. And so I like giving that example because even the nicest of us experience road rage, especially when
Mhm.
somebody's on their cell phone. Oh.
Yeah, well, people can come up with all kinds of reasons why they don't like road rage. I don't think that's going to be a challenge. I think people can come up with a bunch of them, because people get angry at a bunch of things that happen on the road. I mean, it
Yeah.
happens pretty frequently. It happens quite a bit.
Yeah. And it's really intense. And if you're doing that in the car, you're probably doing it when you check the emails and
Mhm.
when you're looking at your text messages and these little moments through the day, all those kind of road ragey sort of negative thoughts that come up, those are affecting you. So if you can integrate these little techniques in order to transform and be an alchemist of your emotions and feelings, that's where you're going to really get the magic of meditation. I feel like so much in the popular culture, it's been just be mindful, and everything's about
So
mindfulness. And
so connect
yeah,
the dots for us. All
yeah,
right, I'm recognizing that I need to do this thing. Okay, I get
yeah.
it. Because I have too many of these negative moments, I need to start shifting that around. But connect the dots. How do we actually get from A to B?
Yeah, so I find that these mini meditations, these 1-minute meditations or 3 minutes, whatever you have time to do through your day, is what's going to really uh, change things. You're going to feel the transformation. Uh, I feel like the advice of just be mindful all the time that we so often hear. It's like, well, okay, well, what's the strategy? Because guess what? Humans are in that default mode network. It's called default for a reason. We're in it 47% of the day. And it is typically a negative mindset. It can also be used for creativity. And not saying it's all wrong to be in that mind wandering
Mhm.
state, but typically it's in that negative me thinking. Yale researchers call this the me center of the brain, or me activity, is when you're in that default state. It's all like, why did I say that yesterday? What am I going to do tomorrow? What's my list of things to do? And how am I going to get it done? So we want to switch to be in that more we connection sort of state of mind. And I find that it's not just be mindful, just do it, just be mindful all the time, because it's human nature not to be. So to do these breaks, of course it's great to do a 10-minute meditation in the morning, and I do that too. I have a morning meditation practice like Anne Marie that I've developed. But if you can also integrate these powerful pauses right before you go into a meeting or a Zoom call, and you're arrive a couple minutes early, and before you press accept to go in there, sit tall, take a few deep breaths, and check in with your body. Maybe even close your eyes or turn away from the screen before you press send on that stressful email that, is maybe a rejection or something that it needs to be done, but it's work related. Like you don't really feel great about it. Check in with your body. Did you write it in the best tone? Turn your chair so that you're looking away from the screen for a moment so that we can get out of that small minded thinking of screens, expand your awareness, and just check in. And then turn back to the email. Should you press send now? Is there something you can change in it? Or is it the right thing to do when you really listen to your intuition? So, integrating these little moments in your day is going to make a huge impact when you put them in the times where you need them most. It could also be like a recovery when something's stressful afterwards. So,
Mhm.
before or afterwards, to help you recover. And like Anne Marie was describing, when she feels really like stressed out from something, it's like a reset button or even like a knob you're turning of your nervous system. You're turning it into the direction you want to go, that rest and digest and rejuvenate part of your nervous system and healing part.
It's funny as you're describing that, I'm flashing back to the early part of the conversation where we were making an allusion to AI, and it
Mm,
occurs to me, well, why not combine the two together? Okay, so
yeah.
you have that email, that sensitive email that you want to get the right tone on. You're not really feeling it right now. Why not ask AI to write it for you? And while AI is writing it, do your 1 minute meditation.
I love that idea. And we also are using AI and like biofeedback, which is what you described earlier, like where you are seeing those effects in your physiology and they're affecting, like your
Mhm.
thoughts are affecting your physiology. We're using that with our smartwatches. Your
Mm.
smartwatch will probably tell you if you have your settings right on it, it'll say, you're really stressed right now. You need to take a few deep breaths. That actually used to annoy me. I was like, I know I'm stressed. But then if you could take that as like, oh, this is the time for a powerful pause. This is the time for me to take some deep breaths, close my eyes, take a moment of a break from the screen. Your smartwatch can tell you that too. And you asked, what can people do to move the needle? It's also like, I have a gift for your listeners, and that is audio meditations, guided practices that come with the book when you go to meditationfortherealworld.com. So if you've kind of struggled with meditation before, that can get you into the habit of doing, it's less than 10 minutes a day. So setting that time aside, but it also gives you tips of how to integrate these 1-minute meditation and guides you through Meditation for the Real World, the book. So that's at meditationfortherealworld.com.
So, I mean, when you say their audio, do they have like a musical background? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, they do, because I worked with a sound engineer. She has 2 master's degrees in music and sound engineering, and she designed the music with me to specifically induce your brainwave patterns to be conducive for focus, for memory, for relaxation, depending on the song and depending on the practice. And it's like no other meditation you've done before, because it integrates these science-backed music and sounds of nature. Your brain doesn't know the difference between being really in nature, like you described, Walt, earlier, that healing effect of your walks, and then hearing the sounds of nature, believe it or not. So integrating those sounds of nature in order to help you go into that relaxed state better, so you can get a more efficient practice in. So
That's very interesting, in a number of different ways. Not the least of which is that when you're focused on finding ways to incorporate these new meditation practices, you are in effect setting yourself up for that mindset that you're trying to develop just by going through that process. I mean, that's one of the takeaways that I got from what you were saying. Just build them in wherever you can during your day. You're basically rewiring the brain. Okay, so that's step 1. Now
yes.
This is kind of like step 2 that you're talking about here, right? This is like, okay, I've got a foundation in place. Now what am I doing with it? Well, I'm tying it in with sound and music. I'm guiding my meditations. I mean, it's not like the guided meditation has to be a first step that you do just to get into meditation. It can be part of the more advanced part of what you're doing. It can be part of that daily practice.
Yeah, a lot of people do need a guide when they're absolute beginners, for sure, because you don't really know what to do with your mind and you need to be redirected. In the book, I also have like the meditations where you can read them. So you can do them as you read it, which is pretty cool, because we're so addicted to technology that at night, if you have this by your bedside, you can pick it up and it'll tell you what to do. And then you close your eyes and you do that technique for the specific outcome that you want. If you're feeling angry, depressed, you're feeling like you're dealing with some sort of grief or FOMO, there's meditations for FOMO or for doom scrolling, whatever modern day issue you may be dealing with. It's in there, because I found that not every meditation works for every situation. And the research shows this too. Different meditations are going to help you therapeutically. I'm a yoga therapist, so that's what I do, is work with people therapeutically and adapt to give them what's going to be best for their situation. So, looking at it like a handbook, like what am I dealing with right now? Okay, let me do a meditation for that.
So, I mean, I was a little bit jealous when you told us that you live in Hawaii. I was like, okay, well, that part. But since I don't live in Hawaii, I still need to be able to figure out which one is the right kind of meditation for me. Is that something the book goes into? Is that my resource to go to, or how else do I find out? How do I figure out which one to do?
Well, everybody's going to have their own personal preferences, but the way the book is organized is chapter 1 is all about the basics. What do I do with my hands? Is this meditating? Is that meditating? What are the different techniques? What's the science of what's happening to it, to my brain and to my body? Chapter 2 is mental health. So, if you're dealing with anxiety, you're dealing with, stress and overwhelm from work. You're just wanting to cultivate more compassion and connection. So whatever it may be mental health wise, then you would choose a topic to dive into. The next chapter is physical body. So, I feel like I'm getting a little sick. Then I'm going to do the meditation practices that have been shown to be helpful for immunity. And I'm feeling like, I have really high blood pressure. This is a problem a lot of people have, is like when they go to the doctor, they get white coat syndrome. Your blood pressure goes up.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
there's a meditation for that based
There
off
is.
of a Harvard researcher. He's a cardiologist. He in the 70s was looking at how, mantra meditation was becoming so popular, and you get your secret mantra and go through the whole process. And he's like, you know what? I'm at Harvard. I know this is working, but I want to test this in a way that they'll be down with to put this in the research. So he's like, I wonder if just repeating the word one or just the word love, if that mantra would work too. Guess what? It did so profoundly that there's decades and decades of research to support you just sitting there and repeating one single word that's either neutral or positive to you. It can be either. And so if you have perhaps a phrase you want to cultivate, I am strong, you could repeat that phrase too. So repeating a word is another technique. So there's different types of meditations that will help with different situations. That will help you lower your blood pressure. That's what he's a cardiologist. So he's looking at those effects. And for me, I tend to, or I have had this problem through my life where when I go to the doctor's office and I get a procedure done and the doctor does not provide that compassionate care, they're not really listening to me, they're dismissing me. Well, fight, flight, or freeze, guess what I do? Boom, I'm out on the floor. I'm to the point I'm shaking. When I come to, I don't know who I am. I don't understand that I'm human. I am like so out of it. For days after these experiences, I have that adrenaline rush that makes it so I can't sleep. So obviously I'm like, okay, I got to figure out how to not constantly pass out when I get these medical procedures. So I went to a yoga teacher and I said, what can I do? They said, well, you're going to do the classic mindfulness technique that a lot of people do, is like pay attention to your breath and your body sensations. I think if most of us have meditated, those are focal points that are often used in meditation that work really well for a lot of things. So I go in there and I'm prepared and I start noticing my body sensations and I feel my heart beating out of my chest. And then I feel myself going pale and I taste metal in my mouth. And I say like, okay, notice your breath. And my breath is really fast and it's betraying me. And boom, I'm out on the floor faster than I've ever been out before.
Wow.
And I'm like, wait a second, I just did a meditation and I feel worse. It made it worse. Well, I looked into the research and apparently with acute anxiety, like panic attack level anxiety, like I was experiencing, and maybe you experience like socially or a variety of situations, that is the time, not the time to do body awareness and breath awareness, because you do feel like your body is betraying you.
Makes
You
sense.
actually want to do a different focal point. So I'll tell you, if anybody else listening right now has had this experience or is around somebody that's having this experience, don't tell them to pay attention to their breath and body. It'll make it worse. Instead, I have several techniques that are in the book, but two in particular that I like to do when I'm in that situation and I need to answer questions to the doctor. I need to be alert. I'm going to bring my awareness to the outside of my body. I'm going to place my feet down if I can on the floor. I'm going to feel the points of contact. You can do it right now as you're listening, of my body against the chair or the surface beneath me. And then with each exhale, I'm going to feel my body melting into that surface. So I'm focusing on the outside, and grounding is that technique.
Right.
That makes me very present. I'm present in the environment. I can answer questions. Getting a dental procedure, you don't have to answer questions. So I do visualization techniques in those circumstances. And I visualize, for me, my safe place is at the beach. Your safe place might be somewhere else, somewhere at home with your puppy in your lap, whatever your safe, comfy place is. You imagine you're there. I'm literally wiggling my toes when I'm getting a procedure and I'm imagining them in the sand. My breath becomes the sound of the ocean. And that's my meditation. So there's so many different techniques of meditation that I wanted to include, because not everybody is going to vibe with every meditation technique. And depending on the situation, it might not be the right meditation technique.
Again, that's why it's important to have some understanding about what meditation or what technique. It may not even be meditation, as you pointed out, but what technique to go to when you need it. In other words, we need to be able to differentiate. I'm in that panic attack. Okay, now I know I don't want to try to focus on my breath and my body. So what do I do instead? Well, you just described it. You melt into that chair. You focus on the externals at that point.
Yes.
Which is great, by the way. We don't get a whole lot of advice about focusing on externals. Most of the time it's about going inside.
Yeah.
Right, Anne-Marie?
True.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, that is really true. Good observant.
Yeah. So it's nice to have the alternative there. It's a good one.
Yeah. And I love your nature example of like your walks in nature, you're already meditating. Those are great opportunities to integrate these mini meditations into your day. Of course, you could do the walking meditation, taking your dog for a walk, or you could take a moment, sit on a bench, even take your shoes off, put your feet in the ground. We call this grounding, but actually researchers call it earthing.
Okay.
And when you have your body in physical contact to the earth, it reduces your inflammation, it lowers anxiety and depression, it literally lowers your blood sugar levels. That's what a great impact nature has on us when we are touching it, because of the negative charge of the earth. So that's really, we're supposed to be barefoot on earth all the time, right? It's just our body asking us to be in nature. So you could even sit on a log, sit on the ground if you like, under a tree. When you go in nature, you can enhance that meditation practice by taking that powerful pause and just listen to all the sounds in nature, right? We just talked about how nature sounds have that healing effect. Listen to the birds in the distance. Listen to the rustling of the leaves. And then you'll also take a deep breath, breathe in and smell nature. The aerosols in the air when we're in the forest, they increase something called a natural killer cell. This helps our body fight tumors and cancer more effectively. So there's something called Japanese forest bathing, and that's something I talk about in the research of walking meditation. Is they walk in the forest, they do this forest bathing, and the researchers were like, why are they getting so many more natural killer cells? Well, they believe it's the aerosols in the air. So take some deep breaths and really enjoy and savor the smells in nature, because they're healing. Taste the taste in your mouth, feel the feelings, look around and see the light shining through the leaves. So get in touch with all your five senses. This is a five senses meditation, and it's great to do in nature, because you're going to absorb all of those healing benefits even more. So these are ways I like to integrate it using science, to support what I'm doing, and also encourage us to do healthier behaviors in general. That's going to be the way we get better impacts anyways.
My next question doesn't necessarily apply to you because you're in Hawaii, which is paradise. But for somebody who's in a winter environment, you can't really take your shoes off and interact with the earth. If you do, you'll probably get frostbite. So,
you can touch it though.
What's the alternative?
Touch a tree. Touch a tree. When I lived in China, the older generation only would hug the trees. I'd see them in the parks literally hugging the trees. Tree hugger, we call it, but actually that's like a thing they do. And it makes a lot of sense, because to physically touch nature is showing to be really beneficial for us. If you can't go outside, you can also look out the window. That's going to be helpful. Even just looking at pictures of nature, just like I said, listening to audios of nature, it tricks your brain into thinking you're there. So looking at images of nature can have those positive effects too.
That's encouraging. I imagine it's probably not as powerful as taking your shoes and socks off, but nevertheless, it's nice to know that you can still get the benefit out of it.
Yeah. And some people will do, if you have wooden floors or stone on your floors, that's where I would take my shoes off inside my house, more likely than the carpet, which
Mhm.
wouldn't have the same effects. So that's another way to kind of integrate it into your day.
Yeah, for me, it's when I go down to the basement. Because that's
Yeah.
when I'm gonna be most likely to, without having to go outside, to be in contact. Yeah.
But
This has
something
been
something I like
No,
something
go
I
ahead.
like to do is I absolutely adore the sound of rain, which is good because I live in the UK and it rains a lot. So quite often when I go to bed, I just listen to like a rain soundtrack. So it's
Yeah.
like a thunder and lightning storm with rain, and I'm gone. So goes to
Yeah.
sleep so quickly.
That's called pink noise. So did you know that noise has a color? Sound has a
Yes,
color.
yes.
Yes.
I use green and brown when I'm reading.
Yeah, brown is really good too.
Mm,
Like a waterfall or the sound of the intense waves crashing
yeah.
in, that's brown noise. And these can be really good for like memory consolidation, focus, sleep. We've all heard of white noise, right? White noise is just kind of like a shh in the background. Well, pink and brown noise, for example, they lower the high frequencies. So it's more of these low natural frequencies. Like a lot of sounds in nature are these sounds. And they can be
Mm.
really beneficial to have in the background of our meditation, like I do in the meditation challenge. But also, they can be really helpful just in the background, like you said, like for sleeping or when you're focusing on a work project or when you're reading, that can be helpful to help you focus.
Good stuff. Well, we're nearing the end of the hour, and as usual, whenever that happens, I look back and I say, "Wow, this has been one of those uplifting hours again," which is what we want. Your daily dose of happy.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. So that's a good thing. But there are a couple things we need to do before we part company for the day. First and foremost, you have the book, Meditation for the Real World. I presume that's available everywhere because you went through a major publisher to do this thing, so they
Yes.
publish everywhere. But is that true? I mean, confirm for me. What's the best way to find the book?
Yeah, the best way is to go to meditationfortherealworld.com because I have all the links of where you can get
Oh,
it.
there you go. Okay.
And this book is like something I would recommend getting the physical copy of. You can get digital if you love that, but the physical copy because I worked with a New York Times illustrator, and she did these beautiful illustrations that make this a coffee table book. I mean, this is the type of book you leave out, you give as a gift. It's a relaxing experience to physically read it and to get away from technology for a little bit. So, yeah, you can get all the links at meditationfortherealworld.com along with the challenge to help you build a sustainable science-backed meditation practice, including the manifestation meditation in that challenge that brought me my book contract and also my partner who I just married last week, who's the love of my life.
So
And
you actually included that on the website. That's pretty cool.
yeah, that's included in the challenge you get with the book.
Very nice. All right. I like that. Now, do
Can
you
I
also
have
like?
can I
Yeah, go ahead, Anne Marie.
Oh, sorry, I just wondered, is there an age range for your book? Is it something that children could read?
I would say teenagers to like
Mhm.
preteens could benefit from all the meditations in there. There's a section in the book for children, like an activity that you can do as a parent with your children. Yeah, I would say like any teenager could do any of the meditations in here, or preteen.
Yeah.
But small children, there's a section of like meditations you can like guide them through, do with them. But the best thing I always say to parents is to just do these like mini meditations in front of your
Yeah.
children. When they
Yeah.
see you like you're about to get frustrated and you pause, you close your eyes, and you become an alchemist of your energy in front of them, that example is the biggest transformation you can do.
Sure.
But yeah, the book has these illustrations. It almost looks like a children's book, but honestly, as adults, I love reading books like that like guide me through and that have infographics and explain things. I think we learn better that way too.
I think so too.
Exactly.
Do you also like hearing from readers?
Oh, I do love hearing from readers. I do.
So if somebody wants to reach out, how do they find you?
Yes. So I have an Instagram. If you get the book, definitely like tag me in Instagram. It's at scienceof.yoga for my first book. So that's my Instagram. I have a YouTube and Swanson Wellness. I love it when you comment on those. I read all the comments and try to respond. I have practices on there to help you, like yoga, self massage, meditation, tai chi, qigong.
Very nice. Yeah. We've been talking a lot about practices and different practices you can incorporate into your daily life, which you're urging people to do, particularly on a 1-minute basis, wherever possible throughout the day. But there's a practice that I've adopted in the last year and a half, 2 years now almost, that I noticed about 2 years ago. For the first time, I mean, I've done the show now for a little over 11 years. It took me 9 years to notice this thing, but I finally noticed that we have all these guests on. I've been doing the show with guests and co-hosts pretty much since the beginning, and all of them are givers. They're all, they've been through some hard stuff in most cases. They found stuff along the way. They want to share it with the world. They're giving it out there. They're doing this podcast. They're doing blogging. They're doing social media. They're putting all this information out there. And the thing that I noticed was, we don't give them credit for the free stuff. I mean, you got some credit because you got a couple of great things out of it. You got a book publishing deal. I mean, you got some good that came out of it. But most of the time, we don't get any credit for that. We don't get any notification of it. We don't even notice that it happened.
Yeah.
We don't notice that somebody benefit from it because we never see that part. So I like to kind of do a little pull quote on it and say, on behalf of those people that you've never met, you've never seen, never will meet, never will see, who've been benefiting from all the stuff you've been putting out there, thank you. Thank you for what you've been doing, because it makes a difference. You're making a difference in this world.
Thank you. And thank you for putting together these podcasts. I want to point out something that I talk about in the book. It's called the helper's high. When we do good things, when we're giving, we experience something that scientists call a helper's high, like the endorphin rush as if you're getting the runner's high, right? You feel good. And those effects last for days, even weeks after, according to the research, when you do good for others. And I encourage people to bring their meditation into the real world, into action. And one of those ways is through kindness and compassion. So if you're enjoying this podcast, the best thing you can do is write a review for this podcast. Go in and write a review. And then after you're done, notice how that physically feels, probably in your heart. It might feel like a weight is taken off your shoulders when you do something like that. That's the best way for this podcast to get out in the world. And if you get meditation for the real world, go in to Amazon and write a review. That makes a world of difference. That's how we get our next book contract, is the reviews, believe it or not. It's not even about the number sold, it's the number of reviews you have on Amazon. So when you do that for people, we do it all the time. It makes a big impact. Take a moment after you write a review for the book and for the podcast. Notice how it feels. Next time you're in a restaurant where you have great service, or a store, go in and write a review on Google and say the name of the person that gave you great service. And then afterwards, do a 1-minute meditation, a 1-breath meditation, and savor the feelings. Psychologists call this action of savoring, of like feeling it fully, that's what they call it, savoring. And I love that because we're getting even more of those benefits when we take a moment to appreciate it, to feel it. We're helping our genes be better. We're helping our body heal itself better when we take that moment. So it's good for you too, to write reviews and put that action into the world.
I just realized I almost missed a connection here that I should bring in before we're done, because you live in Hawaii, and one of the best practices I know for it, I'm not sure I'd call it a meditation practice, but it's certainly a practice for, bringing the vibe into a higher space and calming yourself down and so forth, is the Ho'oponopono practice, which comes from Hawaii. I'm just curious, is that something that you tie into with any of your scientific research? Because I've heard a variety of things, but I don't know if you've heard anything about it.
That's often used for forgiveness in family situations. I did look into the research for it, and there was some local research on it because I was considering putting it in the book. It did not make it in the book. So many meditations didn't make it in the book.
Yeah.
There's 83 meditations in the book. We couldn't put all of them in there. But yeah, there's, that emphasizes a point, is that meditation isn't just from one culture. It's not one religion or spiritual spiritual practice. It transcends time. It transcends cultures. People intuitively know this is good for us. And it's come up throughout all different indigenous cultures, historical, because this works. And neuroscientists are just beginning to uncover how it works.
Which is exciting. Very exciting stuff. Anne-Marie, I always go to you at the end because you're really good at this. What's your tie together? When you think about this really cool conversation we had with Anne today, what's the one thing that jumps out at you?
I think what I loved is the fact that a lot of people think you need to sit down for an hour or so to meditate, and you don't. It can be those little like 1 minute to 3 minute meditations that can make a world of difference. And that I feel myself. But I think what I've taken from Anne's talk today is the power of nature and meditation and the walking and the difference that can make. And we've got the warmer months coming up, so I would urge everybody to just go and try it, see the difference.
Yeah, I'm going to try it. I can tell you that. I mean, what better time to do it than during a walk, right? That's perfect.
Absolutely.
I love that. So, Anne, thank you once again for joining us, for sharing all these beautiful wisdom bits. I love it. Really, really cool stuff that you were able to unearth there. And I hope you keep doing the researches that led you to do not only this book. I have a feeling that you're going to continue to tell us about, over time, you're going to tell us about more and more of the science behind these various spiritual practices that we do that kind of get dismissed in many ways by mainstream society. But I think the more than we discover, we're going to realize, wow, this stuff really actually has a lot of science behind it.
It really does.
Do you have any? I want to ask you one thing before we're done. We're kind of past the hour, but I want to ask you this anyway. I actually personally believe that before mainstream science is going to really start buying into all this stuff and start applying it in its own fields and so forth, in all the scientific fields, they're going to have to discover and identify what we would call spiritual energy and be able to measure it physically. And I'm curious to know what you know about that.
You know, I was thinking about this earlier when you were describing the biofeedback situation where that person was being measured and all the systems of their body. And you said they measure everything. And I was thinking, no, they don't. We don't have instruments yet to measure prana. We don't have instruments to measure chi and to see the meridians, but it doesn't mean they're not here. Right. There's a saying in science that lack of evidence is not evidence of lack. Just because we don't have the instruments or the studies yet doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And so it's good to be skeptical and question, of course, but also to be open-minded because more discoveries are yet to be made. And our intuition is a great power also. So, you know, I think more and more will come out, but I don't know if we'll ever have the instruments to measure that. And I don't think that devalues it. For me, prana and chi are something that the ancient people physically felt through meditation and awareness when we were not cutting the body into pieces and separating it, right? All of this stuff, all these separations of the systems, all the systems, they're made up. We don't have a different system from the nervous system and the endocrine system. Some scientists will debate all day long that it's called the neuroendocrine system. We haven't even decided how many systems there are because we separated the body and made all of this up. It's all one unified whole. And that's actually what I found interesting about the research that I included in Meditation for the Real World is that Dr. Lazar, she said, you know, we're not really talking as neuroscientists as much about different areas of the brain being changed by meditation. We're talking about network activity and how the brain works in unison with these different areas all at once. Because what research is uncovering is that it's a holistic, that everything is connected more, that these separations are arbitrary. They're for learning purposes. We break things down for learning purposes. So I think that prana or chi is an amalgamation of all of these things, right? It's our blood flow that you can physically feel and measure. It's our electricity through our nervous network simultaneously. It's all of these different types of energy going through our body, the mechanical energy at the end of neurons that's bringing in and opening up the different pathways. It's the blood being pumped. It's all the lymphatic flow, all of these fluids flowing in and out of tissues. I think it's all of the things at once. We just separated them into pieces. So I don't think we're ever going to find a way to measure it because it's everything.
We need a measurement that measures everything. That's what it is. That's a great point, though. I love the way you describe that. And I love the fact that you describe that from a scientific perspective, because my biggest concern as I look at the scientific field as a whole is that science in many areas has kind of lost track of what you were talking about, which is you need to get a little bit past measurement and start tapping into other things. And that's part of science. That is actually scientific activity. A lot of scientists dismiss that. A lot of scientists say, no, that's not science. But you know what? I think they're missing a bet. So thank you for, making that really, really clear, because I think that's valuable. I hope lots of people pick up on that part of the conversation today. I think that's probably the best part right there. Out of a
Well,
whole list of really great parts, that part.
I want to emphasize something that I included in my first book, Science of Yoga. And that's an experience that astronauts have when they go to outer space. And this summarizes everything we just spoke of. So many astronauts have come back from outer space and they're changed. They then become philanthropists and do great work and focus on connection and compassion after their trip. Well, what happens to them is they stare out the window for hours and hours. I mean, they're working. They have jobs to do. These are engineers and doctors, and they have work to do, but they'll forget to do their work because they are so engulfed with staring at the earth from the window. Yeah. And this act of just staring at the earth, it could be similar to some yogic meditation techniques we do, like staring at a candle flame, that bring us into that focused state. So they're mesmerized. And what they describe is they look at the earth and they see it as one organic whole, without separations. So all the separations we have between the countries, between the economies, the political separations, we made them all up. Just like the separations between the systems and the body, we made it all up. It's one organism, and they see that, and it changes their perspective. Now, you don't need to go to outer space to experience this. One particular astronaut came back and he said, you know what, I got to figure out what this is. Do scientists know? He talked to neuroscientists, psychologists, philosophers throughout all different universities. Eventually, the closest answer he could get was with a philosopher who does a lot with Eastern philosophy. And he says, what you're describing, what you experience in space, and all these astronauts have described, is the yogic concept of samadhi, or you could look at it as the Buddhist concept of nirvana, that perfect peace, that being in union and non-separation, that's what you're describing. And so the yogic practices are very similar to going to space. They do the physical poses, they do the meditation of staring at the earth, this meditative practice, they do breathing practices, they do all the things that are involved in yoga, and it seems like a lot of them are naturally getting to this higher state of perfect peace and connection, or at least experiencing glimpses of it. I don't want to call them perfect, but we get these glimpses of that true unity that's there. And so it's a macrocosm to the microcosm. Within you is a universe, and everything is connected. There's no separation.
Wow. What a great way to wind up the episode today. Seriously, I love that. I mean, we always look for a way to get that upward swoop at the end, but you just gave it like a swoop. Woo! We just flew off the ramp and we're like flying through the air after doing our ski jump. I mean,
yeah. Actually, a yoga researcher is the one that looked into this. It's called the overview effect. And that's that feeling of being like able to step back and look at it as an overview, that it's not all these separate little pieces that we all focus in on. It's bigger than that. It's all one. And that's why that word we repeat, one in meditation, that Harvard researcher found is so powerful, is I think that word is quite positive. It's about the connection of everything. It's all one.
I was kind of skeptical about using one until you just described it that way. Now I'm thinking maybe I ought to give it a shot and see what happens.
Yeah, it's really powerful.
Very
Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, Anne-Marie, do you think we got the answer to our question about, were we going to learn more than we thought we knew about meditation?
And more. That was amazing.
Yeah, I think we'll mark that one down as a yes. So thank you,
Yeah.
Anne Swanson, so much. I mean,
My
really, really great.
pleasure.
We loved having you on the show today, and best of luck with the book. I hope people buy it up by the thousands, and yeah, really, really cool stuff. So thank you once again. Thank you, Anne-Marie, too. Love your participations and your contributions. We had a number of visitors on the live stream. Thank you guys for tuning in, and thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.